Welcome to The Ways We Work, a new podcast from America Works, where we talk honestly about the job market, the workers we serve, and the systems that shape opportunities throughout the nation. Today, I am joined by someone who's been leading this work for decades, our CEO of America Works, Dr. Lee Bose, and I am Joel Thomas, our Director of Education. We're starting with the question at the center of everything we do, why work still matters. So Dr. Bose, why does work still matter?
Well, what we've found over many years is that so much of the efforts on the part of well-intentioned people is to counsel and to provide support services and to, provide people government interventions through cash benefits, when in fact none of this has leading somebody out of poverty or out of dependency on government. And that early on we discovered that employment is the thing that really changes people's lives, and that the importance is not only getting a job, but how you keep that job and what are the lessons learned from that. And we feel that it can take as many as 3 or 4 different attempts of moving somebody into the right employment opportunity. But at America Works, we're skilled at not only finding the openings, but also doing the matching to figure out which opportunity makes sense for each person. Part of it is they're in training with us, and we get to observe them. We get the feedback from the trainers who really work with them over a period of time. So when you think about an employer who goes to hire someone, they're now increasingly just filling out electronic applications, and then there'll be an interview. So you really know maybe the history of somebody's work performance, but you really don't know who they are and how they're behaving. So what we're able to do is an incubator for really seeing all of the skills and the areas that the person could be successful in. And we really pride ourselves in not looking at what the weaknesses or barriers are, but looking at what their strengths are. And so we're able to much more get people into successful employment.
Yeah, I mean, working for the company for the last 8 years has taught me so much about
8 years.
Why. Yeah, it's been 8 years.
I would have said 2 or 3 or 4.
No. 2 or 3 in America Works years seems like 10, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it does. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 50 years, 45 years at America Works. So,
wow.
Yes.
Wow. And you've seen so much change. And we'll talk more about the changes you've seen over that long arc. But for me, just in this almost a decade now, I've really come to understand why work matters, not just for our clients, but for ourselves as staff members as well. I always say every time I help someone with a resume or I construct a workshop or a curriculum to help someone with a resume, it forces me to look at myself. It forces me to think about my own work history. Speaking of which, what was your first job?
Well, I worked a lot in the restaurant industry, but so in my high school years, I was very much involved with my violin and orchestra and singing and many, many plays and musicals and things. I really didn't have an opportunity except my volunteer work. And so my first real employment was a volunteer job at Boston Children's Hospital. And I was what they called a candy striper. I don't even know if they have them anymore. Because,
Really?
Well, because they had this cute little uniform, and all the girls had pink ribbons in their hair. It was very old school. But what happened with me is they immediately placed me in the ward where thalidomide babies and young people were. In the 1950s, there was a drug called thalidomide that was given to pregnant women, and it resulted in huge amounts of deformities. Children born without legs or arms, children born with their feet missing. It was a remarkable number of people who were, all the ages were from like 2 and 3 up until 18 on this floor. And I was pretty stunned by this. I had no idea about how this occurred. I didn't know why they assigned me to just this. Most of the candy stripers got to like wheelchair patients in and out of different tests and things like that. And they just said, no, you're going to work on this floor with these young people. And what was remarkable is the human spirit. I mean, these were people who had been given the worst of the worst. And yet, if they had a toe and another toe, they could hold a paintbrush and they'd be painting all day. And there was one very difficult thing where a young woman had to have her leg amputated for a host of medical reasons. And I got a chance to work with her and before and after her surgery. This was such a wonderful opportunity for me because it was so frightening when I first walked in. But as I did the work throughout the 4 months I was there, I learned more from them than I ever could impart. They could impart to me more than I could impart to them. And it really left me with a true commitment to do this kind of work somehow in my future. And I always wanted to run an organization that would help people from a young age. So I knew that's what I wanted to do. But slowly over time, I shaped a vision that it had to be around work, that work should be the central thing that all these organizations think about and work towards. So that's how I got started. And after that, I worked in a variety of food service summer jobs where I worked at the Pewter Pot in Newton. And at the end of the night, they would give you, I had to wear a little vest, I had ties. And at the end of the night, they'd give you all the scraps of the muffins. And so I started like voraciously every night eating all these muffin scraps. And
this is the downside of working in food service.
I put on so much weight, my vest didn't fit by the end of the summer. But I loved the interaction with people. I had one thing. I was also working during the day at a camp. The head of the camp came in with her family. And I was so excited and nervous that I poured hot coffee all over her. And I was so upset and ashamed. I offered, to have it dry cleaned, which I did. I saw her at the camp the next day and she gave me the outfit. I apologized so much to her. But again, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed meeting people. I enjoyed making them feel better, seeing if I could help them, getting them what they wanted. And I knew that that was just a way for me to be socialized. I was not a shy person because I did a lot of theater, but I was not somebody who had like a huge group of friends. I have a younger sister, 11 months younger than me. I mean, she still hangs out with her like elementary school friends. It's like she was an inspiration to me, but I could never do what she did.
Yeah. So as I'm listening to you, it reminds me that a lot of people say, work used to be easier. Access to work used to be easier. Like if you had the desire to work, there were opportunities to contribute. Now, there's always been conversations about wages over the centuries, but even for me, one of my first jobs was food service, Domino's Pizza, and I did not get the kind of real impact you got in that first Candy Striper experience. But what I did get is exposure to like amazing people that shaped my view of the world. So many different drivers from so many different parts of the world worked in that store.
Right.
And they shaped my view of financial literacy at a young age. They exposed me to parts of the world that I didn't know about and experiences just sitting in that store and routing their pizza deliveries helped really shape my worldview. And I wonder how easy it is now for people to either find meaningful work or work where they feel like they fit in.
I think, that is one of the reasons we developed the structure that we have at America Works. I mean, the truth about the job market is a lot of it operates on who you know. And of course, for the people that we work with, they may not have access. They may not have an uncle or, in your case, extended family coming into New York City who had different businesses. So every job that people get in most of the time is through their access, their networks. So what we constructed was to create a system where we became the old boy, old girl network for the people that we help. And that's through our sales staff who go out and meet with the businesses.
Yeah.
And so they're there to really break down that barrier. It is true over time it's gotten harder because so many of the entry points will not be in person. It's through electronic applications.
Yeah.
And what we work on that as well. And we try to do a beeline around the system of just the electronic application by getting to know. If you go into like a Staples store, you'll see that there's no one there to help you. And there are help wanted signs everywhere. And then you'll see that anyone who wants to work has to get an electronic application on a computer, has to complete that, and then wait to hear from someone. So we are skilled in going up to the manager on the floor. Do you have to wait for everyone to come? Can you interview some people perhaps before central office or whatever it is, that place in the sky, gets to see the application? We could fill out the application, but can I bring some people over? Oh, I would love that because I'm short-staffed every day and I have turnover and I don't have time to wait for people. I have a lot of customers who get angry. They go to the printing area. I have nobody in there. It's just if someone calls out sick. So I would really appreciate that. So we do a variety of things. We can offer a temporary position, like you need to hire some temp workers. We can provide that. And that's very often the first way people get hired. They start as a temp and then they get hired permanently. But we do what we can to break down some of those barriers. And oftentimes those tests are designed by psychologists and really are not useful to the store manager. And that's just one example.
Right.
But so the breaking down the barriers still happens. We do a lot of events to kind of give people access. So we'll have a job fair. We'll invite businesses in to meet some of our people. We put panels together where the business community talks about what they're looking for, and we broadcast that to our clientele. So there are things that we didn't do as much in the first 10, 15 years that we do a lot now, which is really geared towards the same thing, creating a network where maybe one does not exist. We've even, in certain locations, run competitions where the students come up with ideas for businesses. And we have a business panel who will award $1,000 to the student who comes up with the best idea. And they involves the business community in a way that they get engaged, but it also involves the clients in really getting interested in, boy, I have always wanted to start my own business. So that's often in music or something, but they have good ideas. And it's a way to engage both parties. And that's really breaking down the barriers.
What are some of your most memorable experiences working with clients in the early days? I mean, in the 8 years that I've worked, I have my top 5 stories that have lived with me and will continue to live with me. What are some that stand out to you?
Well, I remember there was an early program on welfare to work under the Carter administration.
Oh, wow.
And we got a special grant. I had gotten it to go to Lowell, Massachusetts. And I was very against mandating people to go to work or cutting them off the benefits, which was a lot of the assumptions of the early programs. But the first person I met came up to me and she said that she had spent, her kids were teenagers and she had one kid who's already left home, but that she watched soap operas all day. And whenever she would see a job or people would talk to her about a job, she would say, that's not for me, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. So when we called her and said, you're going to be part of this and you have to participate, she was very, very upset. Yet, at that point, she met me. She had a job that she had now had for a month or two. And she said it was the first time in her life she had self-worth. She never expected herself to be able to take a job, let alone be successful at it. And I remember, as I always do, that sometimes the least promising person becomes the most successful person on the job. So it's counterintuitive because all the economists will tell you, if you haven't worked before, your education level isn't very great, your chances of success are terrible. But what I found is the opposite, that you become so grateful and thankful that you actually become some of the best employees there are. The other thing I remember in New York City, we used to have tons of people coming to visit us and see what we do. So I'd always go into a classroom and ask people to talk about how they found us. This was all voluntary. And this one woman stood up and she said, every morning I saw one of my neighbors in high heels going to the subway station, and it would be click, click, click on the pavement. And I saw her come, I saw her go. She'd come back at night, and I ran downstairs and I said, what are you doing? Did you get a job? And she said, well, I'm starting to, but I'm at this company called America Works. And she gave me your phone number and your address. And so many of the people we got initially were just looking at their neighbors who were working with us, because one of the things we did is get them the right clothes, get them, spiffed up so they had the right attitudes.
Right.
And people would notice it in their own neighborhoods and then ask to join us. So that struck me again. And again, we're talking about how networking can be so significant. And you don't even know that it's a visual thing like that that's going to cause people to do a 360 and turn around. So that was another example of something where I just was taken aback by it. But then over the years, there have just been so many different success stories. Many of the people who come and talk to our classes have gone on to set up their own businesses.
Yes.
So we used to do a lot of placing people in childcare. There were, at that time, a lot of people ran smaller childcare centers out of their own homes. So we would give people the right appropriate learning that they needed to get a certificate and then place them in childcare centers. A number of the people that we work with have set up their own businesses to do childcare for the city and for the states that we work in. So that has become a major employer of ours. And again, it's great when they come back in and they can say, look at where I've gone to. Look at where I started. I was like you, but here I have my own business. And
Right.
it's a very big incentive.
Yeah, it's a big motivator and such a journey of self-confidence. But there are so many things, and there are so many things that disrupt community that can shift a person's self-confidence day to day, moment to moment on an interview. I think one of the stories that stand out to me is when we had an office in Brooklyn some years ago, I remember overhearing some clients say, I get really nervous going to Manhattan to an interview there. All those people in suits and those tall buildings just kind of intimidate me. Those weren't their exact words, but something
Right.
of that sort. And I was just really taken aback. I love Manhattan. From the moment I came to this country and stepped into the city and saw the big buildings, it was like, this is where I belong. But it's interesting to me to hear that even for someone who is a native New Yorker, that felt like a place they didn't belong.
Yeah.
But, we worked with the client, we coached the client, and they were able to get a security job in one of those big buildings. And to see the shift in people's self-confidence and how they start to identify and take ownership for the spaces that they're a part of, really, I think, speaks to the magic of our work. What do you think the job market would be like if people never got a chance like we helped them get?
Well, I don't know if I can speak for the whole job market, but the amount of socialization that goes on, I mean, when we place someone in any kind of position, they are starting to work with, as you did, a huge swath of life. And I remember we had a company in Hartford, and I went in there to just meet some of the clientele and talk to the staff. And the first thing, I talked to a young woman, and she told me I was the first white person she had ever spoken to. And she lived in this community, and she had been to school, but the teachers were all African American or Black. And she had never met someone talking to her who was white. She had seen them or seen them on TV. And it made me think about the vast things that occur in the workplace, that we've always said we want our offices to be in a business area, in a downtown area, not just in the community. We've often run sort of preliminary storefronts to get people excited and then bring them into an office, get them used to going out in the morning and having to travel. It's been very useful. But the transformative things that happen right in the workplace. One of the first groups that I worked with getting jobs for were people who had developmental disabilities. And this was before they had shut down a lot of the institutions. So some of them were in community programs, but most of them were still in big factory institutions.
Yeah.
And so I got an account in Sudbury, Massachusetts, which was a factory, plastic factory. And I took about 20 of these people in to do basic work at the factory. And I visited them, and they were all carrying like little kids. They were 20, 25 years old, but they had like children's lunch boxes, and they had very infantilized clothing on. And people would talk down to them. So within about a month going in, and they had gotten their first paycheck, second paycheck, third, they had all bought satchels that looked like the other workers. They had knapsacks to put their lunch in. They had changed the way they were dressed. We had never said to them, you have to do this. But the integration with a regular group of people, and of course, nobody talked down to them. They talked to them like another adult. So suddenly they started speaking differently. And the whole transformation that work can give to someone, especially somebody who hasn't been socialized, is very, very helpful. And so today, I see it all the time. You know, somebody comes in initially, they're perhaps not dressed for even an interview, and we help them find the right or get them the right clothes for that. But once they're on a job and they start to do the business of whatever the company is, between the workers that work there, the customers that come in, the supervisors, you don't have to tell someone to change. They start to change. People who couldn't give eye contact are told basically, you know, when you ask somebody what they want, or ask them if they want anything else when they come to the counter,
Right.
you know, it's very important to smile and say, can we help you anymore? So that happens naturally on the job. So many of our people, about a third within the first 6 months, do get promoted. And that's because they're following all of those cues. One of the things we try to emphasize is ask if you can help do anything extra. So we do that. I know you do it in your classes.
Right.
Volunteer to help train new people. All of these things help set you aside from other people. But it's a naturally occurring process, which I love, because you can stand and lecture people all the time. I mean, one example, the pandemic was a terrible thing, right? It was throughout the whole country. And
Yeah.
we, for years, had taught people, had a computer lab, here's a keyboard, please learn to do it, and had instructors and tutorials. During the pandemic, we gave out laptops or
Loaners.
any kind of components that they were able to access the internet because they had to teach their children at home.
Yeah.
We did a study pre and post about how people did. And after all those years of teaching people in workshops, the fact they were in their home and they had to teach their kids, their learning on how to use, you know, the smartphones, tablets, computers went through the roof. Not because we sat in a room and taught them, because they had to take it home and had to learn something useful
Right.
for their own families. And that, to me, again, is an illustration of what we're talking about. It's the value of having to do something and getting satisfaction from it. Then your learning is exponential. And we really believe that at America Works.
When there's a real demand for learning,
Yeah.
we step in and provide what people need. But you know what else we do that is the sweet spot for me of this work, and why I continue to do this work after 8 years, is I think we also hold a space for vulnerability. Because in the pandemic, a lot of those parents who needed the technology, not just for their own job search, but to help their children with homework and function in society, because we were all social distancing, people felt really vulnerable.
Yes.
And some people felt really ashamed. because of either their technophobia or their inadequacies with using some of the technologies that they now had to use. And that always strikes me as one of the most powerful things about our work. You know, we hold that vulnerability,
Well, and
so
I
it's
think,
okay for people to.
yeah, and your use of the virtual training programs, people had the chance to actualize it. I mean, another small study we did, a lot of tension existed in homes because everybody was working at home and kids weren't going out to school and all. But compared to the general population of equivalent people, the people who were working with America Works, there was much less violence in the home. There were fewer arguments. There were fewer people getting thrown out. I mean, because people had an outlet. And without that outlet, it was a powder keg in a lot of communities, being home full time and not having the ability to get out of the house.
Right.
But because we provided what we provided, and what we've done, as you know, because you designed it, the thousands of programs that are now virtual, people access them. They now don't, we don't have to say, this is a good program for you to, to learn a new technique or to get certified to do a certain type of work. They go through and they select them themselves. And I think without the pandemic and without those constraints, a lot of people wouldn't have had to learn how to do that and take the time to do their training. So thank you, Joel.
You're welcome. Most welcome.
This is the way it always happens. Out of adversity, you learn things. I mean, our
Right.
whole first thing about this model came about by accident. We were at a cocktail party, and the head of Blue Cross Blue Shield was there. And when he heard that we were working with people on public assistance, he said, "Oh, I'm trying to get a contract with the state to run Medicaid for the state. If I can say I worked with you, I think I would have it be a shoo-in to get the contract. So send me as many people on public assistance who are on Medicaid, and send them to me for employment." So we did. We sent in the first group of 20, and we had a trainer on site. Our people came. This is a big, big insurance operation, so a lot of clerical jobs. Our people would get there early before they actually rang bells in those days.
Oh, wow.
Before the bell rang to go to your place of work, our people were all lined up because we said the best way to have people notice you is to get to work early. Right. The same thing on lunch breaks and coffee breaks. They would be, it would be a 15-minute break. They would take 5 minutes and come right back. And the other thing with the on-site trainer we were able to do was structure the job so each person's job was simple enough to do. And within the first 2 months, everybody got hired. So into other departments around Blue Cross Blue Shield. So we put 40 people in, and the same thing happened. So we became the way the company sourced for new employees. And again, the motivation was through the roof. These were people who never thought they'd get to work in an office in a downtown. And they were so grateful. And guess who won the Medicaid contract? Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Blue Cross Blue Shield. Now, this to me is one of the most important aspects of workforce development that's sometimes under or not talked about as much or understudied. The clients change, the worker changes, their lives are transformed, but the employers change too.
Right.
Their presence in the space, their engagement in the larger system, their collaboration with both the state or with workforce intermediaries like us naturally changes employers. They learn to work with different types of people. What have you seen over the years?
Well, when I was getting my PhD, which I did at night while I worked full-time doing this work, we did a study, and where I looked to do the study, it was to talk to employers. And what did they think of programs that were struggling to help people? And every employer said, I can't stand it because they come in, they tell me they're going to get me a good employee, and then they dump them on me, and then they run. So I'm left trying to figure out, this person isn't working out. I feel badly for them. And that's the biggest problem. These people who are working, first of all, they don't understand what I'm looking for. They think that because they're doing good, I should do good as well. So, I say, I'd like to hire veterans, I'd like to hire people, but there was no follow through on the part of these groups. That's why we decided early on that at least for the first 6 months, and then if the employer needs it as much as they need, we were going to be there. We were going to be talking to the employer, finding out if there was a problem. We would have a coworker problem where people weren't getting along. We'd step in, do the training, be on site. We would find that a supervisor was frustrated because they were asking too many questions. So we would go to the client and say, keep a notepad, keep down your questions, make one appointment a day with your supervisor, ask them the questions then. So it's not all day long you're interrupting her work or his work. All of that really addressed that problem. So, I mean, now what we do is people have learned from us over the years. So there are a lot more organizations who do what we do. But I make sure that we get the money to provide intensive services. And in many times the government doesn't want to give the full range of services that are going to be more expensive than just, okay, there was something that in the beginning which was called Job Club. Job Club sat everyone in a room and they would be given the yellow pages and they would be given a phone and told, start calling. That was that was a big government program for years.
That was it.
That was it. And it did not go over very well in the long term. I mean, it wasn't successful.
Right.
Because the people themselves didn't even know what they were looking for. There was very little coaching going on.
Right.
There was no contact with the private employers except their phone call. And it reinforced all that frustration they've had their whole life, from walking in the door trying to say, are you hiring anyone? And the supervisor would take one look at the person and go, nope, not today. And then they would be standing outside and they'd see another person come in and get hired.
Wow.
And so this was just a continuation of that kind of frustration. But it's interesting, like I said, so often what we've learned, we learn it by things that would initially seem like a mistake. And if you talk to any business person about the startup of their company, it's always like that. It's not like they had the whole vision and went right to it. It's like they learned from trial and error. So
we make the road as we walk it, so to speak. What then do you think policymakers miss or get right about the human aspect of this work?
Right. I don't know. Right now, there's a big push on to take people who are collecting food stamps or on Medicaid and to get them working. And if they're not going to take a job, then they're going to lose this benefit. I think oftentimes, for example, with Medicaid, about 40 to 50% of the people already on Medicaid have jobs.
Right, already working.
That's fascinating to me. And the fact that people on food stamps, the companies like Walmart know what the benefit structure is the government is providing. They are looking for people that they don't have to pay above minimum wage because they're getting all these benefits, housing benefits, welfare benefits, food stamp benefits, medical benefits. And I have told people when they come to me, because I get lots of calls from people in Washington, like, how do we make this work? I'm like, bring Walmart in, bring big employers in, because you have to get them as partners always to implement something like this. Because if they're getting financial advantages by having people collect those systems, then we have to figure a way to motivate them and incentivize them to not be doing that. And it's interesting because we had a group from Congress, all people, Ways and Means, which is where all these programs go through it in Congress. And there was one man in the group, and he said, Jen Tiller. I said, yes, Jen Tiller. She worked for me for like 8-9 years. He said, she was the only person who ever mentioned the private sector to me, that we have to bring them into how we're going to set up these programs and policies. I said, yes, she knows because she sat there in Congress and, Pepsi Cola would come in to lobby her to make sure the food stamps still were going to be there because so much of their money is made off of it. So when I've talked to Jen, she's emphasized we have to involve the private sector. It cannot just be a bunch of government policy people talking about what's good for those people. we have to engage the full package. So it is a big effort right now. People are talking about it. There are other programs that are still on the books, like the TANF program for people on public assistance. That's a nationwide program. States get the money from the federal government and also spend part of their share, usually a 50-50 federal government, state government program. But over the years, the emphasis on employment has shifted. And there isn't a lot of interest in reopening that legislation. We'll see what happens. I mean, that's for a whole other discussion, I know.
Yeah, we'll certainly be getting into the weeds with some of these things in future episodes. Do you think mandates work?
I think that they can get people's attention. I don't think it's necessary because what I've told people, some people haven't wanted to hear it, like commissioners of welfare and things, but it's really not, if somebody isn't motivated to go to work, you cannot have them do well on an interview. They won't get hired. They're smart enough to figure out if they really want to just collect benefits. Now, almost no people really want to be in the benefit system. So
Right.
part of our job is motivating people. Like, we want you excited. We want you to come in. We want your children to get involved with, we'll host events for families. We work with the non-custodial fathers. They're fathers who are not paying child support. Our push has been to really look at the men who are mostly men in the prison system. And when they come out, they have these huge amounts of money they owe. So how do we motivate them and get them involved with becoming an active parent with this family that they have? So we've done that. And there are different people who understand its value. So in the city of New York, for example, under the Bloomberg administration, they absolutely knew. The Commissioner Dorr set up a whole program just to do this and allow us to do all the kind of motivational things we need. And so, yes, it works to get people's attention, but overall, we have to get them motivated. We have to get them excited. We have to get them up and ready. And that's our job. So,
Yeah. One of the techniques that we've used over the years that I think really speaks to what you're describing is motivational interviewing, Like the more I use it, the more I realize that it's not that people don't want to work. People want to work. Why wouldn't anyone want to have a major contribution of time and energy reflect the dignity they know they have and they're entitled to in this world? So it's not that people don't want to work, but they have so much to consider.
yeah.
The non-custodial parent, the person who's an ex-offender who is returning home, the custodial parent who has to figure out childcare. And when we use motivational interviewing and we help people sort of just put their considerations all on the table and figure out what makes sense for them right now, and what they're going to do with the realities of the world. This is what this costs. This is what I need. These are the jobs that are available. And holding that space for them has been really, really helpful.
Yes.
What are some new techniques that you think need to be part of this conversation or new approaches?
Well, I think, one of the things we're looking at is the use of AI and the use of computers to do interviewing, to practice. We used to have everyone stand up in a room and do a mock interview. Like, the class would shoot questions at them and they'd have to answer. And then the teacher and the other students in the class would critique them. And that became less and less possible because of people's mobility and how much time they can dedicate to sitting in a classroom, and doing one-on-one or doing that group thing after doing a bunch of one-on-ones was difficult. So we are working with a company right now to see if we can pilot this kind of approach, that they will be able to do it on their own. They'll practice the interview. They'll get feedback right away from the AI, and they'll be told what they're doing, whether it's eye contact or it's how much smiling you're doing or it's the questions you ask. And I think that's going to be very helpful to people. We'll see, because we're just beginning it. And I think, though, that our use of the employer panels have been very motivating to
Yes,
bring
yes.
in the businesses. And I think that that is a good technique, and I think that's something we have to expand and do more of, and other people should be doing it as well. The job fairs, they exhilarate everyone. I mean, there's never been an employer who doesn't come to a job fair and see the hundreds of people who are now looking for work, because a lot of the people who are recruiting and hiring at companies, they never get out of their place of work. They feel that they're frustrated because they can't find people who are motivated, and the learning that goes on both sides. And I think that's where we also saw early on, you have to involve the private sector.
Yes.
Yes, you can apply for a civil service job, but the waiting period is a year or two in most cases. But the private sector is always changing and always hiring. I mean, after 9/11 in New York City, everything was at a standstill. I mean, nobody was hiring, businesses weren't doing anything, but every business started hiring security guards. And
Yeah.
every business started putting all of their paper files in warehouses in New Jersey. So we just went 100% security and warehouse work. And it was amazing because everyone said, how is this going on? I mean, the economy's, and I said, you adapt. I mean, the beauty of an entrepreneurial company is that we're always like, okay, we've got to shift. We're not going to go and tell the businesses you need to pay more, you need to shift what you're doing so
Right.
you can hire more of our people. You see where they're going and you begin to work towards it. So we do that every day. The job market is constantly fluid
Constantly
and
changing.
it changes constantly. So that's, I think, the biggest thing that we do and people should think about more often.
Yeah. You brought up AI, and there've been so many fairs around AI for the last 3 years since we have these generative tools now like ChatGPT. But I've been so surprised to see clients have so much concern that they're bringing into the conversation in workshops and trainings, and then watching us develop workshops that help address those concerns and fears, and have clients even now come to us saying, well, I've used ChatGPT for this and I use it for that. Do you have more training on how to use it for my job search and how to use it for helping to coach me during my first 6 months of the job? And it's amazing to me how something that starts out as a whole lot of fear and sometimes some conspiracy theories and sometimes some valid concerns about the future of work then morphs into a tool itself that could help people in the here and now.
Well, I have to tell you that whenever we submit proposals, because you've been doing this now for over a year, I mean, before anyone else was really talking about AI and its use and teaching people how to use it to help them write thank you notes after an interview or using
Yes,
it to
yes.
do job search. And so we write all of this in our proposals. And very often, when I say proposals, I mean proposals that go into government agencies that are looking to fund something like what we do. They star that and say, can you train me too?
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's like, because so many of them have not received the kind of tools you're providing to our clients, but it's also been a great thing that we do that other people weren't doing at the time. So thank you, Joel.
Well, first, I want to say thank you to my team and all of the staff at America Works that informs our adaptation. I think one of the great things that we do is that we take this feedback from people on the front lines, and they take feedback from clients, and they really study their lives, their lived experiences. I always say we don't develop anything generic at America Works. Like our clients are unique. The places they live and work and make their lives are unique. And so we want our services to match that. But speaking of which, what have you noticed? I mean, we operate in 30-something locations across
Right.
the country, right? What have you noticed about the different relationships to work people have in different cities?
Well, my main observation is that most of the people that we work with, even the people who are on Social Security benefits, because we work with people who are receiving Social Security benefits, is that they are really locked in a community of like-minded people. So whether you're talking about Milwaukee or you're talking about the people in Southern California, or you're talking about people in Maryland, in Baltimore primarily, or DC, they are really in a community of people like themselves. But the one difference is New York City, where when we ask people, and I ask this periodically among all of our people, do you consider yourself upper class, middle class, lower middle class, poor, impoverished? In other cities, they often will say that they are low income, that they are at the bottom of the barrel, that they are poor. In New York City, the majority of people think they're in the small part of the middle class. They're lower middle class, but they think that they are going to get somewhere else. And I think that it's because
we are.
well, no, I think it's because
We're in New York.
right, but it's all integrated in New York. Not by design, but it happened. Although I do think the people who really saw immigration coming into New York, they made all the streets numbered and they made all the avenues numbered because they knew that numbers were universal at that point and that people could find their way around the city. So there was a sense that they wanted an integrated city. When Peter Cooper set up a lending library at the bottom of the Brooklyn Bridge because the people were living in Brooklyn but coming into work in Manhattan, he did that with the idea that people could get ahead. When you go to the Plaza Hotel and you walk in the circle that surrounds it, people are pushing carts because they're homeless and they're walking beside a stockbroker. There's something about the integration of the city, this particular city, that breaks down a lot of barriers for people, and they really can envision themselves being at a higher. They think they're at a higher level, but so it's an interesting phenomenon. I mean, that's just one thing. There are so many things we could talk about because we work with so many different people. Yeah. It isn't just low-income minorities. We work with veterans. We work with homeless veterans. We work with people who have disabled. They have disability payments. We work with people who have been out of work for a long period of time. As I said, non-custodial fathers. We work with people coming out of prison. There is not an area where we have not strived to bring people into the workforce who are typically excluded. So, and I'm not saying that they're vastly different people, because actually they have many of the same anxieties, but it's really no different. I mean, when my sister and I were young, our mother was suffering from isolation. We were in high school. We were getting ready to go off to college, and she just seemed kind of a loss. So we got her jobs. First job we got her was like at the church, where she answered phones. The next,
your mother was your first client?
She was my first client.
Wow.
I was 16. Then we got her a job at the music school, at my sister's music school. Wow. And she said, I have to get her out of here. She's really a busybody. So we got her a job as a bookkeeper at another music school in Cambridge. And she started to go back to college, getting more degrees. She had been sent to college by the nuns in Boston at the age of 15. She actually traveled to Kentucky. And she was very, very bright, obviously. She got full scholarship in the 30s during the Great Depression. And then she was an actress and she was a writer. She wrote for the first public TV station. She was a poet. But we knew that even a simple job, because she was brilliant, would give her what she needed. Self-confidence. She had her own paycheck. She met all these people. All these people loved her, she got to know backgrounds on everyone. She'd come home, she'd want to talk about everybody she worked with and how she was helping them. Right. It was just great to see. And I just felt that work was something that could transform people. And yeah, that was my first.
Your first client.
Yeah, and your mom. I don't think she never realized what we were doing behind the scenes,
right.
But we did, and so did other people. I mean, it was magnificent for her.
And I think that's the beauty of this work. I want to personally thank you as well. Sort of a similar story to your mother, it was not easy, I think, for a lot of people in my generation, and me in particular, coming sort of coming out of 9/11 and then coming of age and trying to really solidify a career path after the Great Recession. Um, there were moments when I thought I'd lose hope altogether that I'd be able to really get something that stuck.
Yeah.
And, I chose the military and that helped me with grad school and everything. But for a lot of the period of time where I had inconsistent work, or I had to juggle, like figuring out.
Joel, you were so hard. When we
Yeah.
first offered you a job, well, maybe I'll take a part-time job. I've got this job working over at the library in Queens. I was like, okay, we'll start you whatever way you want to start.
Right.
I knew you had such potential. But the idea that I had to wait, like pulling teeth to get you in, and then you were
Yeah.
so magnificent at what you did, and then we wanted to promote you. Oh, no, you're not going to promote me, right? I am so happy that you stuck with it, because you have so much to offer. And any employer that you talk to who didn't hire you is a fool. That's all I can say.
Well, I think everything is contextual. So I'll be real vulnerable for a second because, first of all, thank you for seeing my potential. I don't think every employer has the time or the space or the context in which they could really see how someone could add value to their space. So thank you for taking the time to see me. But also, I think part of why I was gun shy is that I was downplaying why work mattered as well, because I was started to get really fearful of rejection and wondering if I could really make something stick. And like a lot of people who live in New York, we have all kinds of other things we do. So I was downplaying why work mattered, right?
Right.
I remember the periods of unemployment I've had in my life, and they weren't long, but there were still lots of in-between periods. You go anywhere socially in New York, the first thing people ask you is what you do. And I hated that question.
I think that's everywhere.
Hated that question. No, funny enough, people say in Chicago, the first thing they ask you is where you come from, because there's so many people through the Great Migration that came in from all over.
That's true.
But there's something about New York. People want to know right away what you do and whether it matters to them.
Right.
And I used to be so intimidated by the question and embarrassed by it when I didn't have something to say. And so I started to kind of downplay work and upplay hobbies and all the other things that had meaning to my life. But I get it now. I get how having something that naturally stems from my strengths and offers me an opportunity to contribute and to pay my rent, right? This is an expensive city, adds to the confidence and dignity that someone has. And while I still don't like the question, and I won't often answer it in all spaces, I am proud of the work that we do and my contribution towards it.
Well, you can now add podcast interviewer to your resume. Thank you. Thank you for everything.
So
I think we can end on that note. I think
I have one more question.
Of course you do. You always do.
You have
I can't end a meeting with you.
you
One
have
more
children and grandchildren.
That's correct.
And they will reach working age in the 2030s and 2040s. What do you think work will mean to people in 20 years?
Well, in our family, it means everything.
Yes.
So if you're asking about my own grandchildren, they're going to understand the value of work. I mean, my daughters came in and out of our workplace at America Works all the time, and they were made to answer phones when they were probably too young to do it, but they learned the value of work, and it was very important. So I don't see that stopping for those of us in our family. But I think when you talk about this, and of course many iterations of what's the future of work going to look like are discussed, and conferences are set up, books are written on it. And my first employment, I was what they called a manpower planner. I had to envision like 6 months to 2 years to 5 years from now, what are the skills we should be preparing people for?
Right.
And so I go through all kinds of labor statistics and data analysis and everything, and I come up with a report, and people go, bravo, nice report. I had no idea what the job market, just as I never would have predicted that New York would have bottomed out after 9/11 and had to go into security and warehouse work. I mean, there are so many things that happen that we can't predict. I mean, one of the, as you mentioned, the Great Recession, I mean, what that did to banking and financial institutions around the world, who would have predicted that? We didn't understand what those swaps that were going on in the mortgage markets. We didn't understand that. I mean, there were a few people. Michael Lewis understood it. He wrote a book on it, but and found 5 people who were able to do very well in the market because they predicted it. But that's a question that I don't think, no matter how much data you have in front of you, you're going to basically understand. I mean, right now, Silicon Valley is going through huge transitions.
Yeah.
I was told the only thing we should do is get people coding for the future of the economy and working in high technology. And so all these programs were set up for coding, and all of them have shut down because basically, unless you're a self-paced learner, like the tech people who work at America Works, who are constantly reading in the evenings and on weekends about the latest, the coding has changed. There aren't the coding jobs that were there short period of time before. It's all being done by AI.
Right.
And so I think that that's a good question, and we can often speculate, but I don't know how you can predict what world events are going to bring to us. Take one step at a time. And I always tell the staff, if you change one person's life, then you've done an amazing job.
Right.
And often you don't know until people come back 5 years, 10 years later and thank you and bring flowers that you actually made a difference in their lives.
Right.
So it's good work, and we have to be realistic.
One step at a time.
We have a staff person in one city who said they were going to transform that city and double minimum wage and bring it up to $35 to $40 an hour. And I was like, that's a good goal. That's not very realistic given what your job is, but you want to dream.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. And for me, what will never change is the human side of work and the need for connection, the need to make a contribution, and the self-confidence that people gain from whatever work they do and whatever technologies they use to do it. And I think we will continue to be here to hold that space and be in the question.
Great. Thank you.